You think, Kelly? Don't say anything bad.
Exactly. All right, everyone. It's good to see you. All right, we're going to call this work session of the Athens-Clarke County Mayor and Commission to order here on Tuesday, April 9th at around noon. We have 4 items on the agenda today. We're going to hear first about the compensation strategies from Laura Welch. We're going to look at the FY25 strategic plan, which we know is an update of an earlier plan. We're going to look at our American Rescue Plan Act Homeless Award recommendation, and then we're going to talk about the CAD process for community engagement. And then we will adjourn. Everybody feel free if you are hungry. We have some extra boxes by all means. Don't go away hungry. We're glad to be able to be in a space where we can break some bread and learn and serve the public all at the same time. So we're going to go ahead and, as I mentioned earlier, begin with the compensation strategy plan for FY25 with Laura Welch, who is our interim human resources director and soon to be court administrator, as you may have seen in the news. Laura, good to see you, and thank you for the hard work you're doing here on behalf of the unified government.
Well, thank you. And I know everybody here, but I am Laura Welch. I'm interim HR director at the moment. I was court administrator for 5 years, and I'll be going back to that position beginning on April 29th. But right now, we're going to talk about our FY25 compensation strategy. And I have several colleagues behind me, my team. We have Lori, Sarah, Teresa, and Bonnie. They also worked extremely hard throughout this budget process and on this presentation. So want to thank them for their invaluable support. And we're always really excited to present what we're doing for Athens-Clarke County employees. And we hope that the Mayor and Commission will agree with what we present here and be able to support it as well. We're going to talk a lot about the strategic plan as well. So you're going to be talking about that later. I'm to advance my slide here. Okay, so the purpose of our presentation here today is to review our FY24 compensation strategy. And we're going to give you an update on turnover data and vacancy rates. That's always a big concern of the Mayor and Commission. And we're going to update you on our strategic response to recruitment, retention, and becoming an employer of choice. If you remember that area number 3 of the ACC Gov strategic plan, we take that very seriously. It's always on our mind. And we're going to update you on market factors as of March of 2024, and then finally present you with our 2025 compensation strategy. So in FY24, this is everything that the Mayor and Commission did to address compensation. First of all, with unified, you appropriated $4.7 million to give our employees a 7% market increase, a 6% table increase, and a 1% allocation for pay for performance. And that is in alignment with our pay philosophy that we've adopted and observed over the last few years. We are trying to address retention, recruitment, and reward every single year. So with that unified plan, offering those 3 separate increases is very important. For the public safety plan, you appropriated $2.5 million. And that, since the public safety step plan is basically focused on retention and awarding people for longevity, you offered all the pending step increases that were due, and you also raised all of the 7-step pay plan 7%, and that was very much appreciated by all of our law enforcement, I can assure you, and our firefighters. On the employee health and benefits side, this is very, very important. You held the cost of health insurance premiums static for employees. And that did a tremendous amount to get us toward helping employees have affordable health care and also engaging in our other benefits that we offer. Right, I know this chart that chart that I just skipped is very, let me get back to it. It's really small here. I hope you guys had a chance to review it because you were provided with this presentation ahead of time. But this shows the history of our pay increases over the last 15 years. And I wanted you to focus on the last 6 fiscal years because that's when you've done so much to support our employees. So first of all, in 19 and 20, we implemented our pay study. That was a tremendous lift. That was $5.7 million. Then you followed that up in FY21 and FY22 with a step plan for our public safety employees. We moved more than half of our workforce from that unified plan to their own step plan. That was another 6.76 million. And you did market increases for the unified plan those years as well. So that was a big lift. Then in FY23, in order to keep up with inflation, you did a major pay increase there of 7.6, following it up in FY24 with 7.245. I can't stress how important all of that work has been to maintaining our classification system. If you recall, when we did our pay study back in FY18, we hadn't done one in 23 years. And so we were behind. We needed to not only restructure our positions, but we also really needed to get caught up with our pay philosophy and rewarding our employees for a job well done. And you've done that in the last 6 fiscal years. In previous fiscal years, things were tight. We weren't able to offer that, but now you've offered those sustained pay increases. Am I going backwards? Sorry, guys. All right. So this is a really effective chart. Tom Quist is our HRIS administrator, and he did wonderful things with data for us. And he did these for you last year, but he's updated them this year, and we're working in our new Munis system. So we're all excited about that. This shows our turnover rate, and it shows some milestones through there of what has occurred over the years. But in that last segment on the end, you see our turnover rate's going down. And it's going down for both sworn and certified employees and for civilian employees. So we're really excited to see that downward trend. This also is a very effective slide. And I want you may have already reviewed it, but pay attention to our separations by length of service. This is a slide that indicates the extent to which our retirement options are helping us with our retention rates, helping us with both recruitment and retention. So the green line shows our employees that are 0 to 5 years. But the blue line and the black line shows longer term employees. So overall, of course, we see more turnover in people that haven't been with us as long. We want to change that. We definitely want to focus our attention there. Hiring and retention. This is a really important slide to HR because this is the nuts and bolts of what we do. And I want you to pay special attention to where we are now, which is in black, and where we were last year. And thank you, Nikki, for suggesting that I include where we were last year, because we have made great strides. Last year, we were at the end of FY23. We were only at 77.5% filled. We are now at 86.1%. We had a vacancy rate of 22.5% at the end of FY23. We now have a vacancy rate of 13.9%. So we are getting toward being fully staffed. And you will hear more about this during the budget process, because in the last couple of years, we have budgeted salaries and benefits a little differently in that because we had such high vacancy rate. We can't continue to do that, but that's good news. That's a good thing. Year to date, we've hired almost 200 people. We're at 196. We've terminated or people have left 126. This does not include the movement within the organization. So we've got another 139 internal promotions since January 1. I can't stress enough how hard our employment team is working to move those postings along, get people in the door, get them interviewed, and get them on the job as fast as they can, and serving departments. Yes.
Does termination include retirees in it?
So my question, the 9.2% is over from FY 23. Is that trending upward?
The
The higher 196 terminated, 126?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Can you explain the 9.2%?
Sure. And that is basically our turnover rate. So that's just year to date.
Okay,
We've been experiencing high turnover rates, and I would expect that percentage to go up as the year progresses. It's sort of low right now, but it'll probably, would you expect that to go up, Sarah? Yeah. We're pleased with that number right now. We would like for it to stay at 9.2, but I doubt it will.
Laura,
Does that answer your question?
does that include our internal folks getting new jobs internally? Like,
Is that 9.2? I don't think it does. No, that's just for the experts. It's hard to track the internals because they don't leave Munis. So, but we can work to get at that number as we approach the budget season. Okay. Oh, this is a great slide that Sarah did for us the other day. And I know the type is small, so a lot of people can't see it from where they're sitting, and you have it on your computer screens. But this just shows our vacancies by department. And we have a whole slew of departments that are actually at 100% staff. So that's good news. One of the departments in particular that I was very pleased to see at 100% is IT, HCD. All of those doing great. We do have a really high vacancy rate in transit that is very concerning. And that slide provides a lot of information. So I encourage you to look closely at it. All right. All of you are familiar with our strategic plan, so I won't go through this, but I wanted to include this slide because this is what we as a department are really focused on supporting. We have other areas of the strategic plan that we're assisting with, but strategy A, initiative 2, and the 5 milestones listed there are what we work on day in and day out to show improvement in everything that we do. So I'm going to go through the milestones and address what we're doing and what we've achieved with regard to each one of those. So just to summarize, in terms of strategic plan, we are dead set on becoming an employer of choice. And those are the milestones that would indicate that we're getting there.
Can I ask a quick question backing up?
Sure.
Am I seeing correctly that the DA's office currently only has 3 vacancies?
That is correct for the local positions. So she also has several state paid positions. Those are not considered. That slide only summarizes full-time positions for Athens-Clarke County. So the DA has supplemental employees. Those employees are with the state.
But where
And they're
it
not
gives
reflected in that.
that, where it gives
slide.
that 30 figure, there's 27 of 30 filled. Is that?
That is correct.
So Laura, would it be a good idea to reflect that maybe in parentheses that?
We talked about doing that, and she doesn't have a very high vacancy rate right now, but we wanted to keep the data pure for this full-time Athens-Clarke County employees, but we can separate that out for you and send it to the commission if we need. Right, let's talk about, just briefly, I'm going to go through the milestones. This is what the Mayor and Commission has achieved in working with HR and on milestones 1 and 2, which is implement pay increases. So our strategic plan goes from FY 23 to FY 25. In FY 23, you did pay increases. In FY 24, you did pay increases, very substantial ones. And that has helped people to stay, that has helped our classification system. It's done wonders for morale across this organization. You also funded an attorney pay study, which was implemented in July of 24 or of FY 24. You provided wage floor adjustments in FY 23, which were applied, I believe, shortly after we passed the budget in FY 23. And finally, you did a sheriff deputy pay study. So all of that has supported milestones 1 and 2. Then in addition, for all pay plans, you held that employer share of health insurance constant. Our employer share in FY 24 is estimated to be $13 million. So the Mayor and Commission basically authorized taking on 1.35 million more in health insurance costs from employees. We have basically increased our cost share from 68% to 71% in doing so. And then also our, in holding those constant, with your help, we plan to do that until we get to a 75% cost share for the employer cost share, and then the employees are only on the hook for the other 25%. The next milestone was to use surveys and data analysis to assess employee preferences. We have completed the employee survey, and this is a wonderful survey. We've never done this in my experience where we had outside consultant do it and really devise a good survey that can be used year over year to truly measure change. And so we're really proud to get that done. And the 2 things you can take from that very long document, I think it's about 50 pages long, is that we need to ensure that employees are reasonably compensated in pay and benefits for the work that they do. And this is what employees said that they wanted. And we need to ensure that they are adequately recognized for the work that they do. And that is essentially what you're doing, what you've been doing.
All right.
But we can do more.
I have a quick question. And this was a survey that had 49% of staff take it.
Yes.
Do we know enough to know if that's an improvement from the last time we had done one? I mean,
This is the first time.
okay, so the goal is to just
We
keep.
want to increase that. Yes. Would love to be at 100%, but it is voluntary.
Yeah.
But yeah, we want to increase that percentage every time we do the survey, for sure.
That's online somewhere too, right?
It is. And it was distributed to all employees. It's very much a transparent, widely shared survey.
As I recall, it was also, this is confidential, that it started off with it being very clear that.
Well, we wanted to finalize it. All right. Yes, we wanted to make sure the methodology was correct. And we wanted it to properly reflect exactly what employees held dear. Go ahead.
Laura, question on that survey, because that was the first time. Is this now like a survey? Do we have an, are we still working with the consultant, or do we just, do it ourselves? Or what are the costs going forward? The same for every year, or?
I'm not sure what the cost would be, because they wouldn't have to devise the instrument. We expect the cost to go way down. And I can't even remember how much we did have to pay for this survey. It wasn't that much, because I remember we were able to do RFP as opposed to an RFP, but certainly, I think one very important aspect of the employee survey is that it's independent. And that seemed to be really important to employees. You're not sending your answers to HR. You're not sending them to the manager's office. You're sending them to some guy in Kansas City, and he's going to evaluate that data. So if we could continue to do it that way, I think that instills a lot of trust.
So Laura, is it broken out though by departments or is administrative? So with that said, we have more people on this side, fill out more people at that level, more people. So I that break out.
We didn't do it by level, but we certainly tracked how many respondents we had by department. And I regretted that some people said, well, then it's not anonymous, but we wanted to encourage departments who had low response rates to, hey, if you could get your guys to, respond, that'd be great. If we saw where a certain department wasn't responding. But I can get you that data. We're broken down by
I'd
department.
just be curious about how that broke down and what.
And when you get into what level, then the anonymity starts to go away. But that would be something for the commission to discuss and direct the manager's office to do maybe in the future. I just have a couple of slides here to show how strongly employees feel about ensuring they are reasonably compensated in pay and benefits. You can see the top bar there. It's pretty clear. And then that second bar is the extent to which they would really like to have proper working equipment and tools. But that top bar says it all. That's where we stand with the employees. They really want the pay and benefits to be addressed on a regular basis. This is a list of the benefits that we offer. So it shows, high priority, medium priority, low priority. I think pet insurance is great, but not everybody else does. But you can see that next to wages, health insurance is extremely important. And we presented a few weeks ago to you the strategy. Stephen from Epic presented to you about that and how important that is to us and how closely we look at it and try to figure out how we can offer the most for employees and still stay within our cost constraints.
So Laura, these are the top priorities. I read this before. These are the top priorities as identified by the employees in that survey.
Yes. Yes. You also see on there accrued leave. Which I would lump in with accrued leave, as vacation, sick, and things like that. But you guys added 4 paid holidays. And that has helped us so much in recruiting because if we could put on a posting that we offer 13 paid holidays, that is very valuable to a potential employee and an existing employee. All right, milestone 4, retirement plan improvements. This is something that is very important to me because I serve on as secretary of the pension board and the deferred comp board. These boards work very hard. They have worked very hard, especially in the last few months with our actuaries to determine ways that we can enhance or change the offerings of our retirement plans so that we really address recruitment and retention. So on the pension board side, you are contributing $14.9 million this year toward employee pensions. That's a minimum required contribution. So that is a very rich benefit. We are working with our pension fund actuary. Aon has given us a menu of the cost for certain enhancements that employees have shown interest in. We're working also with Aon to determine the feasibility of restructuring the plan altogether so that we are able to address concerns of people earlier in their career who may feel that 10 years is a long time and stay in one place. On the defined or deferred contribution side, it's called defined contribution, and then we call it the deferred compensation board. So it gets confusing, but the deferred compensation board has been very active in that it has eliminated the fixed income default, which is to say that employees would often invest in deferred comp, but they would get into that fixed income account and not move it into something more profitable. But now we've established target date funds, so that money is not just sitting dormant in an account that only earns 2%. Huge improvement to the plan. So we've moved everybody to those target date funds, and then David Michaud is conducting meetings with folks to make sure that their investment options are honored. And we have also implemented an employee loan program, which has been very popular. Sign those applications very often. But basically employees are borrowing money from themselves and paying it back on a regular schedule. And so that is a wonderful benefit to our employees that they did not have before. And then the deferred comp board basically has two levers that they can look at, which is recommending an increase to the employee match or considering offering some kind of deferred compensation option in lieu of the defined benefit option. Our executive level positions have what we call the management plan. So they can opt out of the defined benefit plan and just go with a deferred compensation. If you extended that to all employees, that is something that the deferred comp board is considering.
Can I make a point too about the contribution? That 14.9, y'all, and when we started that budget is actually about $3 million more than what we paid last year.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot.
But to Mr. Hamby's point, so how are we trending though, from a retirement standpoint? Are we holding our own? Are we, I know we're gonna continue to have to fund it, but how are we trending?
It's expensive.
Okay.
We're trending up. We're trending up, I would say, in terms of.
It's been better this year.
Yeah. And my next question, are the volunteer, I'm thinking volunteer to do all this, right? So employees don't have to get into these plans, or are we forcing them into a plan?
If they are, well, they are automatically enrolled in the defined benefit. And that is at no cost to them. That is a fully employer paid. When I go to other jurisdictions and they find out that we have an fully employer paid defined benefit, and that's like, they're like, wow, you are lucky. That's a rich plan. So yes, that is involuntary, but they also can participate as much as they can or want to in the defined contribution plan.
Yeah.
That is definitely open to all employees as well.
Thank you.
The management plan is not open to all employees. That's reserved for our executive level where it could be less likely. It's, where it's a negotiating, they're offered 10% of their salary set aside in their deferred comp account. And that's a recruiting tool. And it's also, oftentimes at that level, they don't make it 10 years. So it's in order to sort of recruit them in, we offer that management.
Now, does that start at the director level or what level does that start at?
I don't think we have any positions under a pay grade 119 that are offered the management. It's usually if they work for an appointed or an elected official, because they don't have that safety of being part of the merit system. And so we want them to be able to save for retirement. And then if the person for whom they work does not get reappointed or not reelected, then they're not out all of that money. Yeah.
Laura, just before you move on, just to give some color to Dexter and Mike's notes about the defined benefit program. A lot of municipalities and even states have found themselves underwater by failing to sufficiently fund this. So while it is expensive, we're keeping the whole system above water, which some other notable institutions in this fine country of ours have not been able to do. So
we do. Actually, our pension board does a beautiful job of that. We have what's called an OCIO investment consultant, and that investment consultant is able to manage our approximately $300 million fund very actively, whereas other boards are not able to make trades or get into investments quickly enough for it to make a difference. The 14.9 million required contribution is mitigated by our investment returns because we have that investment consultant that's getting higher returns on our behalf. And so that when we see a number like that, we're not hit quite as hard.
And the trends are going to start to go down for that minimum contribution. We're about, to Kelly's point, we're about 85% fully funded on our pension.
We're in good shape. We're in really good shape. And Mike serves as our board chair.
I just sit there and nod my head.
Yeah. This is another great bit of data that we have for you that the employees at HR are really good about thinking about this stuff and depicting it visually for you. We are focused nowadays on retaining people that haven't, we love our long-term employees, of course, but our newest employees, our 5-year people who have not had their 5-year anniversary yet, make up over a third of our workforce. And we want, now that we've got them here, we really want them to stay. And that is what we're showing with this graph. You see way over there in 1974, that's Gene Spratlin.
Just
And-
two. It says 2 employees. Who's
One, no, just one in 1984, one, and it looks like, let me put my glasses on, we've got one in 1974, one in 78, one in 81, and we did some fraction. But I put a red arrow by that, the people that we've hired within the last 5 years is a lot, and we want them to stay. And so that's why we're working so hard on these retirement plan options and on pay increases. Okay, finally. Oh, sorry.
About that.
Oh, is-
One more, Laura.
you have a-
So, I think that's great that people that get over 5 here. Are we doing anything else towards when we get an employee, maybe providing mentors for them or some type of thing that they'll say, you know what, I really like what I'm doing. I got a mentor that can sort of guide me through my first 5 years. Are we doing any of that?
We certainly do that with department directors. Blaine assigns a link, what we call a link to, I used to call it a link. It's been a while since I've been on the management team, but it is, okay. Certainly they have a mentor, and then that's on the department level. That is not something that HR guides, but at the department level, they can, or they may or may not. I wouldn't know. But that is certainly something that we could look at as an organization-wide program that might help.
I think sometimes things like that look good.
Yeah.
Have somebody who can sort of navigate you through some things.
And they don't cost us.
Right.
That's what I like. Okay, just quickly, milestone 5 is our total compensation philosophy. So, and you'll hear more about this once we start our pay study. Because the mayor commission will be charged with coming up with a resolution to establish our pay philosophy going forward as we go through that process. But first of all, you have adopted your, and demonstrated the importance of recruitment, retention, and performance with regular pay increases. That's the table increase, which addresses people, new hires. We're raising those minimums. The market increase, which allows people to keep up with inflation and feel valued and feel like Athens-Clarke County is where they need to be. And then you've also rewarded performance in the form of pay for performance increases, where we have performance evaluations and department directors actually allocate those pay increases. Then we've also, make sure that our pay remains competitive to the market by doing additional pay studies and keeping an eye on it. We have a 5-year plan to increase our employer cost share of health insurance. The pension board and deferred comp boards are working diligently together to address retirement. And then great news today, we have a draft collective bargaining agreement being voted on by the fire department. So we've done that. We've gotten a little bit done with our strategic plan.
When do we get to see that?
Oh no, they'll vote if they approve it, I guess, imminently. They will bring it for, the mayor and commission will have to approve it through agenda item.
Who's involved with that from the non-firefight union side?
So
Who was drafting this?
on the ACC Gov side,
Yeah.
it's myself and Lori Pollitt, who is your next interim HR director. And we also had Chief Nate Moss and Deputy Chief Jeff Kelly. And we had a wonderful attorney. His name is Bill Mosley, and he was invaluable. He said that our process was really smooth. It's much worse. So very collegial. It was very productive.
Wonderful.
So since Carol asked that question, and I always know that we always seem to get hung up with process, so you named all these folks. Then does it go to our attorneys for any review, or whatever we see, that's what we get?
Well, we have an independent attorney for the union, and then it'll go to the attorneys as part of the agenda report process. So the union will vote on it today if they haven't already. So we've come to terms with the language of the collective bargaining agreement, and then that will be brought forth to the mayor and commission.
Okay, so we're the next step.
We're the next step.
Not our attorneys.
And our attorneys will review it as part of that process.
Yeah, I've been in touch with Bill throughout the process. You know, I notified you that Bill, he specializes in doing unions, and he worked with the city of South Fulton last year. And their local legislative body voted to recognize a union for the fire department there. And he goes all over the country working with unions, and I would say we would not have gotten to the point we did without his assistance. He was able to advise staff what are the issues to press on and what are the issues that this is not something to fight about. Would you agree with that?
Definitely. Bill was invaluable. And then the fire department had a wonderful, I'm not sure if she's an attorney or if she was an attorney. The woman on their side was just so knowledgeable, and she and Bill communicated very well. So the whole process was smooth.
I think there was a level of trust there because the union state or national representatives had worked with him in the South Fulton. And I think in Jacksonville, he represents the union. He worked down there. I mean, all over, he was up in Boston, but I think that trust helped things too, correct?
Yes, he and Tori worked very well together, and he was very clear with us about what he needed from HR and from the fire command staff.
I just want to thank you for that, because I remember a year ago, and when we had all these discussions, part of it was like, oh, that collective bargaining agreement is going to take a year, going to take whatever. So I'm glad there was that trust, that we had the right people in place and the work of staff. So thank you. Hopefully it's moving ahead.
It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. And we're currently doing the cost estimation of what it would be to implement the agreement. So coming soon. Okay. For that slide yet, I need to go back. I'm used to have this little mouse pad instead of a mouse. Okay, market factors. We're always concerned with our market factors because this shows the extent to which we're keeping up with national trend. So your CPI is currently at 3.2% and your ECIG is at 4.6%. So if you recall, that CPI is just a representation of the increasing cost of goods and services. Your ECIG is the increase in employment cost for government employees. Very specific about that. So government employees, the ECI index is 4.6. Okay, we're also concerned with unemployment rates. And unfortunately, it's great to have low unemployment, but it makes recruitment really hard. And what we've seen in since we showed these numbers to you before, which was several months ago, these numbers are getting further apart. The U.S. unemployment rate is going up, but the Georgia unemployment rate went down. And so, which means that there's just fewer fish in the pond for Georgia. And so, but, we are recruiting nationwide, and we're glad that people are employed, but we would just like them to be employed here. That'd be lovely.
Last year during budget, we had talked, maybe it was budget, we had talked about reaching out to CCSD doing career fairs, stuff like that. How's that going? Are we reaching out to our community partners and?
The inclusion office reaching out to them. HR does not have capacity to do direct recruitment, but we certainly hope to in the future give more support to departments for their attendance at those career fairs and partnerships. And that is something where we'd like to do better if we have capacity. But at the time, right now, it's at the department level.
Okay,
Departments do their own recruiting.
Laura, Harold, I was in a meeting last week, and I know CCSD, along with the Boys and Girls Club, they're doing a career fair. I think it's next week or in 2 weeks.
Right.
Off the mall, and it could be a good opportunity for us to jump in on that. Again, I'm not sure or not, we may be late at the table, but.
That would be great. I could touch base with our departments and see who else going to that. And we could have a presence there. And something else I was going to say about that.
Do we have a breakdown of the unemployment levels by department? We've seen one of those lately.
That was in an earlier slide.
Yeah, the vacancies by department, it was that one where it turned into red bars.
Oh, okay.
That's got, not only does it have the percentage of vacancy, but it's got the number of positions vacant. And it's, so it's a very detailed, and then it's got your total authorized positions noted by each department. So that's a very rich slide. It's got a lot of information on it.
Thank you.
Okay, I wanted to summarize these three, what Blaine likes to call big rocks. So that it's hard when you get to the end of the budget process and you are constrained by these three items. We have a $14.9 million pension contribution obligation. Our health insurance runs about 19 million a year. We are self-insured, which is a good thing. And those costs have gone up over the years. And then our OPEB, our other post-employment benefits for our retirees, runs about 7.6 million. So before you consider new initiatives and pay increases, these things don't go away. So I wanted to just remind you of that before we go to the actual FY25 pay increase estimates. So this is what we are recommending. Blaine and Mayor Girtz have come up with the mayor's recommended budget, and they are recommending that we do 3% increase to the pay tables. This is for the unified plan alone. These are non-public safety folks. So that 3% increase to the pay tables, and then a 4% market increase for employees. And you can see for the general fund, that's going to cost about $200,000 for the pay table increase. That's not a big number because we're just hiring people in at a higher amount of pay. And then the market increase will cost about 1.296 for 4%. And it's important to understand too, I have a little star there indicating that our merit increase, our pay for performance is rolled into the market increase because we are in our first year of PERPRO. And we want to be sure that everyone is on an equal playing field in case anything is, tough for people in getting used to that system. We want to make sure that the employees get that pay for performance rolled into the market increase since we have that new system. And for the step plans, the mayor is recommending a 4% step plan table increase, which would equate to 1.66 million for the general fund and 1.7 for all funds. And then your step increases are those regular increases for folks that have reached the required number of years to advance to the next step. That's going to cost about a little bit over $700,000 for a total of 2.375 for general fund and 2.454 for all.
Laura, could you go back to the slide before this one, please? Okay. I thought I had a question, but I don't think I. Thank you.
I have a question. What's that per pro? I don't understand.
That's our performance evaluation software. So in the past, we have done paper evaluations and it's been a numerical system. Now we've migrated to a all electronic performance evaluation system where folks are evaluated as a high impact, growth, core, or developing employee. So there's no number associated with your performance evaluation. And we want to make sure that everyone is comfortable with the system before we directly associate their performance evaluation with pay again. So next year, we would recommend having pay for performance separated out.
So you're saying in this, that if I'm an employee and I get my annual evaluation, it's gonna be in this pro, and it's gonna like put me in some category, and then that'll give me an idea like where I might rank with are we gonna say anything about like, well, if you're in this top, what's the top category?
High impact.
High impact, if you're high impact, it's the high impact people who are gonna get the pay, or just be aware that it could be that, or?
No, with performance evaluations, if you have a satisfactory performance evaluation, you're eligible for pay for performance.
Okay,
So you can go all the way down to.
Right, and so I'm getting mixed up with my background, so doesn't differ by department, it's the same process across the county employees.
It is still money is allocated to departments.
Right, there's not like Dexter could do it one way and I could do it another way. I could say, well, I'm gonna give everyone the same. Dexter's like, I'm gonna give some people more, some people less. But we don't do that. It's all the same across the.
We haven't established any rules around that. So for now, it would be up to the department director to allocate the fund.
Okay.
And so I guess, and one other important thing to note, it's very important that the table increase percentage be equal to or less than the market increase percentage, and that is to prevent compression. And so you see there that we're at 4% for market, so that accommodates that. If we had separated out the pay for performance, we would have been equal in table and market, and that would have been two. It would have just it wouldn't have allowed our current employees to move through further away from the new hires. And we like to see that.
And just connecting these pay tables to one of the earlier slides that you saw where employees prioritize their desires. You probably remember from a couple of weeks ago, we're going to hold healthcare costs steady from the employee contribution standpoint so that higher healthcare costs are not going to eat into these raises.
Yes, that has been a perennial problem, that we're addressing that very intentionally.
Can you go back to the unemployment rate? No, not the unemployment rate, the CPI. Go back one more. So based on a 3% table and a 4% market with consumer price index and employment cost index, it's a wash. Okay.
Yeah, but you did give very generous pay increases the last 2 years, so luckily we are keeping up.
Or that second number, 4.6, that's the cost to the organization. And then
the 4.6 is just the general, it's the overall cost of employment for government.
For the government.
Yes, for government employees. For government employees overall. It shows the extent to which pay has increased among government employees.
Nationally?
Across the board. Yes, yes. And
Are we waiting so on this, when we go back to the chart that really sticks out to me is the one on page 9 with the high vacancy ones with those red bars. And that, especially, concerns me. I assume that the public works and central services are about keeping everything going, and then the sheriff's office and office are so important as well. And is this a forum where that seems like some serious issues to address.
Well, Well, and so, I mean, what we may want to do is just ask systemically, you know, how are those sectors comparable or distinct from what's going on nationally? And those are elements of the conversation. Transit is kind of a struggling industry nationwide right now, for example, just as that's the kind of biggest one we see here.
Yeah, if I can, I will advance to the great difficulty to the to the pay philosophy slide here, which basically summarizes everything you're doing to address things like that. It has been a hard job market, and I can assure you, sheriff's offices across the country struggle. We always struggled with hiring enough deputies. I would say, except in maybe 2008. But it is a hard position to keep, you know, position type to keep filled. But everything you're doing here addresses that holistically. And one other main thing that I didn't say out loud is that we are just finalizing the contract with Siegel, who is set to do our pay study. So we'll be kicking off a pay study very soon.
And that's to keep us on the cycle of pay studies so we don't fall behind like we did 20 years without a pay study, 30 years. Without a pay study.
Yes, and if there is something to be corrected, especially with the departments that you see that are in red, that will be addressed in that pay study.
Well, I am particularly like concerned. I think I was reading about the transit. I mean, about the transit and the sheriff as well, just in terms of functioning, our health system functioning, our jail functioning. And so perhaps colleagues can think about that as we're moving forward.
Other questions?
Commissioner Thornton?
This is not a question, it's a statement, and this has nothing to do directly with HR, but when Butch was here, we met and we talked about the vacancies with transit. And we talked about the cost of the CDL licensing. We talked about training, and I really thought that out of that meeting, but I figured out how government works now. You people talking don't mean nothing gonna happen. So, but we talked about stipends and trainings to recruit, and it all sounded so good. And like I said, and I know UGA has the same problem with transit. But a small group talked, we walked away as an effort. Maybe, you know, this body can revisit that, because I do understand it's very costly. I understand it. Training is, and we also could be working, I think, didn't we talk about it with the school board doing
Yeah,
something?
the school district has their own training.
Yes.
They got a spot that they train in the drivers. Maybe we can look at part of that, you know, again, maybe there's something.
Like I said, this is probably not the to the idea out there, but it's surely worth revisiting and publicizing, because a few people, again, don't seem to get things going.
And HR would welcome working very closely with transit to address that, because it is something that is disheartening for us to see that happening. And every time we lose a bus driver, we're disheartened. And we do on our side with the postings and with, you know, keeping those going and moving as fast as we can. And we're working directly with Vic to hopefully, you know, get those numbers up.
There are a few other questions, Dexter.
Yeah. And I asked this, my first year doing look at salary. So people who have reached the step grade at top, are those individuals, are they eligible to get pay raises?
Yes, they get the 7% table increase.
Okay.
Yeah, they move with the table, which is wonderful.
Okay.
Now, if someone does reach the top of their step, they'll need, they can only get those table increases until they promote. Like if they're at step, you know,
So now when,
7.
so explain that to me. So, okay, so I'm at the top of my pay grade,
Mhm.
and what can I get? No, I'm good.
You get the, right.
I'm doing a great job. So what can I get?
Well, If you're on the step plan,
Right,
you get the table increase,
which year will be 7.
7%. It was last year.
Okay.
This year, we're expecting it to be 4%,
Okay,
depending on what y'all do.
okay,
So yeah, you would get that 4%
okay.
increase. In order to open up more steps, you would have to promote.
I understand that.
I'm going back to transit. So we have any information on where we're losing our drivers to commercial trucking, I
Well,
presume?
that's exactly right, Commissioner Knight. So CDLs are
Yeah.
worth a lot of money these
Yeah.
days, right? So we lose folks to UGA, and then we're kind of in the bidding war with UGA a little bit, but folks are going out of the county because they're so valuable.
But trucking, yeah. It's big.
So,
Private sector.
Mr. Link's, point, so if we train somebody fresh off street workforce, do we owe them to any type of, you need to be 3 years before you can leave? Or do we just, if we get them trained well, they work for us a little while, then like a trucking position, then they're gone?
They do not have to pay us back.
Maybe that's something we may want to explore.
And that, the transit director, yeah, we can work with the transit director.
If we train them, then we lose other people. It costs us.
And that was a part of that original conversation. It was not just to train them so they can get another job. There was going to be a commitment for so many. So that wasn't just to train them and, put them behind the wheels so they find another job. But that conversation just seemed to fizzle.
If we've given them a hiring incentive, they don't get the hiring incentive until they've stayed.
Right, yeah.
That definitely is, that works.
Given
That's
the-
worked.
Or given the kind of gravity of interest in transit in particular, as it's our kind of highest opening area, maybe knowing that we're going into a new pay study, we could look at some things that management team could respond to the commission about in the interim. What can we do between now and the new pay study coming out? Obviously, there's a lot of interest in that. But that question from Jesse.
Yeah, two things. One is, when's our work session with Siegel, however you pronounce there?
Siegel, a work session? We don't have one scheduled right now.
Wasn't there gonna be some kind of thing where we talk with them?
We describe that compensation philosophy to them.
Yeah.
Yes.
That will be, the study, we haven't signed a contract yet, so we've got the contract final. It's in their hands, and we'll put that through the signature process, and then we'll kick off the pay study. And the first order of business as part of that pay study will be a facilitated session with you guys to establish the pay philosophy.
Yes, do we know when that will be roughly? Is that?
Don't have it
Until
on
we
my calendar, but I guess.
It's not on the calendar yet.
Probably need to execute
Late
the
summer.
contract and think through
Yeah.
that.
It'll be after the budget, you assume, or?
No, I can't say. But I would hope that it would be
We'll keep,
very soon after the contract is signed. It's not up to me.
we'll keep the commission posted. We'll send something out, timeline.
Well, something that's, I guess, been on my mind, and it seems like it's gonna make more sense to have a conversation with them, but some kind of stopgap we can do between now and then is, we have chronically vacant positions where we might be paying what the market rate is, but the market's just not drawing people in to do that work anywhere. And so while it might be sufficient for us to be at or barely above market for most positions, maybe there's certain positions that we really need to be way above market just to have them filled at all. I'm thinking of some of the manual labor positions that are chronically vacant in TPW, and maybe the same is true also for transit drivers. I don't know how to, I'm assuming this is more a conversation to weave in with, say, Segal or Siegel. Whenever we're having that conversation, but between now and then, if we know that we have certain positions that are just chronically vacant, I know that we've given the opportunity, for example, ACCPD or the DA's office to give signing bonuses and things. Is there some kind of consideration that HR can offer the commission to consider that would be kind of a stopgap measure for trying to attract people into these chronically vacant positions? Because we're at least a full year out from anything that would come from Siegel.
We address that certainly with hiring incentives. That is the first order of business. With a classification system, that becomes problematic. But one way we do it is any above entry request, we give 5, 10, or 15% of the midpoint added to the minimum. And we have to consider similarly situated individuals, people that are already on staff. and what we're currently paying them. So we turn those around really fast. So if we get a really good applicant and they have a lot of experience and they are deserving of an above entry, we certainly, Sarah Ivy does a full analysis of everyone that's in that pay grade and she looks at the qualifications and experience of the applicant, and we get that to Blaine within a day. And he approves it within 1 or 2 days, and we can make an offer higher than minimum. That's how we address that. The problem with, and we certainly, with the step plan, with removing public safety from the unified plan and establishing 7 separate step plans for each public safety agency, you can target pay for each of those agencies. We couldn't do that in the past. And now, with a pay study, you can design your classification system such that, for instance, with the trades, with electricians, plumbers, carpenters, where you can create job families and establish ways of addressing pay to specific positions. We can't do that right now with a classification system because it creates inequity within our organization. But certainly, as you go through the pay study, you can incorporate that into a new pay plan. Does that answer your question?
I guess partially, I mean, maybe I'm just still missing something here, but I think that's great for what you described seems to make sense for me from when we're recruiting somebody who's got a lot of experience and we're trying to be competitive with other people who are trying to poach them as well. But I'm thinking about positions like the worker 1 and worker 2 positions at TPW that just seem to be chronically vacant. And we're just trying to bring somebody in who can be, you know, anyone with a body that can move stuff, you know, like we're just trying to get somebody to do these jobs. And so like they might not be coming with this like impressive resume that we would, you know, use to justify bringing them above market, but do we just need to make those positions?
Well, and we do that for all positions, whether it's, you know, lower on the pay scale or higher, but you've addressed that also with the wage floor. But we do have to be careful with the classification system that we maintain the integrity of the system. But certainly as you going forward, as we look at all of our positions and we reevaluate them, they're all assigned a pay grade relative to all of the other positions. So it's a classification system. So we do things to try and mitigate that problem, the problem that you're talking about. Wage floor, hiring incentives, above entry, we can do that. But if we change what we pay a certain position, then we have to look at all the other similarly situated positions. And it compromises the integrity.
Or as an example, kind of outside of any of the job tasks that we have in the unified government, I'd look right now to nursing. And so large hospitals have found that you could put any crazy dollar figure per hour on nursing and you're just still not going to get people because there's not the labor pool available. So I've talked to some large employers who've said, well, now for a while we were paying $150 an hour for traveling nurses. And then we went up to $220 an hour for traveling nurses, but with no increase in filling those slots. So some of this is simply a labor market challenge. Obviously, there are some things that are controllable. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this because we need to move on. Any other pertinent questions?
And your last slide here is just a summary of the overall cost for both pay plans. You've got unified plan, public safety plan, and your grand totals. If you go with the mayor's recommended budget, you're looking at 3.878 million for the general fund and a little over 5 million for all funds as it currently stands.
Thanks, Laura. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Laura.
All right. Next up is going to be the FY25 strategic plan. Jessica D'Angelo from the office is going to be talking to us about that. As Hill mentioned, this is something of an update to the prior plan. And we, of course, are going to be moving this calendar year into a bigger scale refresh.
I'll file it. Robin file it.
Don't be.
Well,
You're up, sir.
Like, there are a lot of people.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Lots of things affect the appetite.
I should sat over there. There's no alcohol.
I wanna-
They used to have.
That's all.
Future, I'm not sure.
Our family does a spirit.
I've been to Keith.
Show you.
So what does that?
This is a family trip. Last time I won it, was in 05. So now, what you do? We spend the whole time. watching the grandkids.
Sometimes students get to that last round, just get more.
I got started, look, it started like that, and then we still
Gotta get past,
12 years. The topper, we added a bottom. Yes, I think.
Yeah, no, all from the staff.
I remember, the same.
Okay, then. All right.
And I'm gonna get genius. So that is every year, it goes whoever.
Yeah, so you have to set it like, so for me, then she'll be in charge and she'll be in charge of shipping it to them. Bringing it to me.
It's okay to have them be up there, but I need to leave my notes.
I'll look on the time.
Oh, my God.
Oh, no.
You should, anything else that's open.
Yeah, I think it's like.
Sorry.
Cats out.
I talked to him.
There you go, perfect story.
You should start to that somewhere.
How did he found like? He's like. See, I want to.
Like the five groceries are getting put in. It's just, well, really, 5 days. It's like,
My son told me.
Three adults and a kid. All right, I think we got a working laptop.
Almost. Sort of. Share.
Go by,
Yeah, Trump.
go by one end.
Send it down below. 30 minutes more than that.
Did you? Really expensive.
So I'm not sure you can do.
no, what you want to see your next.
Shows up for makeup time.
Oh, I feel it. Now, when you're, on your like podcast app and you're like 1.5 times speed.
I cannot see.
I turn all my audiobooks to actually 0.7.
PowerPoint? Yeah, it's got PowerPoint. Just throwing this. I'm gonna bring it. It's causing problems. It was dropping me. Okay. Oh.
I gotta use my notes. All right. Can't use for some move.
You good?
Yes, sir.
All right. Everybody, our friend, colleague, Joseph D'Angelo.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for the opportunity to bring the strategic plan to you once more. I'm Joseph D'Angelo, Chief Data Officer in the Geospatial Information Office. In a couple of weeks, I'll be 20 years as an Athenian. That came to mind this morning, so I'm excited about that. A little more than 2 years ago, you voted to adopt this plan and turned it back over to the management and staff to carry out. And I'm pleased to say that what has grown from that seed that you planted in March of 2022 is bearing fruit all over the county. In a bit, I'll outline for all of you some of the successes of this plan and some of the work still to be done. And my screen is not advancing.
Yeah. Wonder what that we're going.
Okay.
I got it.
All I heard was you, Patrick.
With a brand new plan in hand, a good deal of work went into making its tenets actionable and measurable. Interdisciplinary goal teams were established, each with co-leads charged with rallying teams around their strategic priorities, which were spelled out clearly through the plan, strategies, and initiatives. These are the people that are driving the success of the plan. Just about every department is represented. The teams work steadily to interpret, investigate, and carry out the work of documenting progress toward the completion of initiatives. I think most of the people, staff members that are in this room today have had some hand in either putting together the plan or carrying it out. Shortly after y'all set out your budget priorities for this fiscal year around this time last year, some of you and some of us started to come to the conclusion that it may be time for a refresh, a chance to refocus and sharpen the aims of the plan. Late last summer, you all met in retreat, and you offered your thoughts on how the plan was going and how you'd like to see things brought to the forefront. We took your thoughts back to the goal teams, who then identified their priority initiatives and also reworked your suggestions for clarifying, combining, or removing strategy statements. We brought their work back to you in the next retreat in January on the 26th, at which time we also discussed broadly the types of priority initiatives you'd like to see for fiscal year 2024, based on other input that you had offered at the August meeting. We identified 10 broad categories of concentration, plus reaffirmed your commitment to delivery of current core services. So these are those 10 primary focus areas that came out of those discussions in August and January. And you'll see that these focus areas are referred to in tags under the goal areas that are depicted in subsequent slides. These focus areas don't themselves change the plan or take place of what's already written in it. Instead, they're just another layer on top of the plan, serving to help staff concentrate their efforts on the action items you and they have identified as particularly meaningful. Other initiatives won't go away or be retired. They'll just move into more of a maintenance tier versus the more pressing items aligned with the topic areas that you see in this slide. For example, we now have strategic plans for homelessness and for affordable housing, which didn't exist at the plan's inception. Our space allocation efforts are moving forward with a recently closed RFP. We recently undertook a procurement restructuring study, and we're working in partnership with community stakeholders to redouble our efforts in behavioral health and youth and workforce development. So now we get into the goals. The first one being good neighbors. And this is an amalgam of strategies that were intended to put forth healing reforms in our community while boosting the public's trust in our government and in promoting physical and psychological wellness. This is one of the more ambitious and wide-ranging goals. It's also the one that's named kind of ambiguously and the least understood, perhaps, but it's the leadoff statement for our plan. Good Neighbors is led by a team representing the police department, inclusion, corrections, leisure services, central services, and economic development. And now we'll get into some of the accomplishments under each of these goal areas. Because some of the work in the Good Neighbors goal is an ongoing or cyclical or was already in motion at the inception of the plan, we're able to document a few quick wins. And now some of the early work is entering its second or third cycle, and as such, refinements are being made with richer baseline data and available for judging how we're faring in each of these areas. You can see in this slide, some selected milestones have been pulled directly from ClearPoint, which is the county's strategic planning software of record. It's worth saying that the goal teams meet every second month to discuss progress toward the achievement of objectives and to discuss the updates team members have made within the software. The identify and close gaps in partnership with the community goal area emphasizes cooperation with trusted stakeholders to efficiently deliver the building blocks of transformation. To do so effectively means to actively engage in listening and dialogue with the community through traditional and novel channels alike. And the group is comprised of representatives from housing and community development, economic development, corrections, inclusion, and the ARPA team, as well as the Geospatial Information Office. The progress under this goal can be characterized as the accomplishment of a lot of larger milestones and one-off programmatic undertakings. Once these take root, these programs will need to be nurtured over time, and they won't necessarily continue to be reported on a month-by-month basis. The workforce development strategic plan will fall into this goal area, both plans, once they're completed, as do the two-way communication and trust building initiatives undertaken by the neighborhood leaders in cooperation with staff and HCD. And now, you heard a lot about this goal area earlier.
Before we move on, I just want to make a request to the county manager's office. I see there's like the one on the September 2023 Good Neighbors, ACCPD partnered with CCS and Church for Youth Gang Violence Prevention discussion attended by 231 students. Is there any like summary of that? Because that we're on this delinquency and prevention initiative task force where we're talking about gangs and youth violence. I don't think either one of us know what came out of that. So if there is any summary of that discussion, that would be great to have.
I will effort to follow up with Deputy Chief Daniel and Ms. Mueller, and I can virtually guarantee they have got robust documentation of that event.
We'll show that.
Moving on to organizational improvement. This is kind of our shoegazing goal. It's a collection of internally facing measures that are intended to cross departmental lines and improve processes that directly affect and augment the smooth operation of government apparatus. Somewhat ironically, it's also the goal that's currently most in peril because it's heavily dependent on the diligence of our Human Resources Department, which is experiencing some upheaval at the top currently, as you heard earlier with Ms. Welch. You all indicated to us that solving the county's workspace issues was a priority, as was our ability to attract, actively recruit, and keep top performers, while finding ways to plan for better transitions when said talented personnel elect to move on to other positions within and without Athens-Clarke County. And that's a lot of what this goal is intended to do.
Question.
Yes, sir.
How much longer for our space allocation? Ready?
I can tell you that the RFP has closed. There were 4 applicants. The applicants were reviewed. The gentleman, Mr. Saunders, who's in charge of selecting a vendor, I think is still in that process right now. So
what did you elect that vendor? Is a year, couple months?
the timelines varied by offerer. They ranged, I think it's safe to say 6 months to a year is probably a good guess.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think you could go out in 14 months, actually.
14 months. But this goal has given us some durable tools that we'll be able to use repeatedly to help accomplish the stated goal of organizational improvement. One example is the equity assessment tool, which is a simple measuring device that staff can use to incorporate into decision-making to ensure that those with the potential to be helped or harmed by a decision are identified and negative effects can be mitigated. The organization is beginning to benefit from a more transparent and streamlined contracting process as well. Several handbooks for internal processes have been created to professionalize the way we complete everyday tasks. Technology Governance Committee has been stood up to ensure that we are making software and business systems decisions that give users the greatest opportunity to deploy a solution that is widely ensured to have the best possible efficiency and value for our stakeholders. In other words, when we buy new software platforms, we make sure that they have wide applicability. It can be used in a variety of settings and functions. Goal area 4 is the one with the most initiatives overall and the most activities so far in this fiscal year. It's also the goal area with perhaps the most self-explanatory title. Again, with key priority areas that focus on ending homelessness, increasing the stock of affordable housing, and memorializing our future land use decisions, among other initiatives, much of this work is likewise ongoing. By far, kind of the goal area with the most movement of late, as I mentioned. Clear Point, as I mentioned earlier, is the system of record for tracking strategic planning process, and as such, it's also a vehicle for accountability. Software can be used to track progress in some of our more specialized plans that govern mid to long-term efforts in specific areas of focus. The goal area has thus far seen the creation of 2 strategic plans to offer to the government and the community a roadmap toward meeting objectives in the area of housing affordability and homelessness. ClearPoint can be used to show where we are at in carrying out these plans. So it kind of offsets the argument that is oft repeated that will pay for the construction of the plan and then put it on the shelf. ClearPoint helps us to ensure that putting on the shelf doesn't occur. We've also seen in this area the development of fair housing materials, the proliferation of information and programs to assist lower income homeowners, and to help renters stay in their rental units in times of economic hardship. Support and decommissioning of First Steps encampment is mentioned in this goal area as an initiative, as is the current effort to revamp the future land use plan with the input of residents and community stakeholders. Goal area 5, safely moving around Athens, is a succinct objective, which is to get people safely to where they need to go. All modes of transportation are explored herein, including active transportation, car trips, and public transit. There are some engineered solutions as well, the aims of which are to ensure that new and updated roads, paths, and other conveyances are constructed with safe travel at the forefront. I think you'll note once more that there are some plans mentioned and nested within this plan. And in the lifespan of this plan so far, we've witnessed the creation of a few new assessments that will bear dividends for years to come. 2 of these are the Transit Development Plan and the Vision Zero Action Plan, both created and enacted within the life of this strategic plan. Also under the time span mentioned here, the Transportation and Public Works Department underwent a comprehensive pavement condition inventory, complete with a new grading rubric and scoring system. And additionally, all of our major travel corridors, except for one, have received makeovers, making visible entrances to our community more attractive and pleasant for all travelers.
What's that one?
Atlanta Highway, and it's not us, it's GDOT.
Okay.
Waiting on GDOT to make some decisions.
Okay.
And our final goal is something of a catch-all for the ongoing work of government service. A prominent theme in the creation and execution of this plan has been to consider ways to take care of what we already have. Beyond this aspiration is the need to better forecast and set aside support and funding to be ready to take care of our maintenance needs in the future. In addition to taking care of what's in the ground, our community took considerable time to study longer-term energy use and our approach to environmental sustainability and resilience, creating 2 long-range plans to steer our efforts in this realm for the coming decades. A number of the initiatives contained in this goal area are tied directly to that effort. And some of what's in this goal area will play out long-term in the retirement of this 3-year plan. Some of what's covered under this goal is mandated or strongly encouraged by governing bodies outside the borders of Athens-Clarke County, and some will require the sustained cooperation of external collaborators who are interested in partnering for the long haul. But done right, this goal, beyond all others, will pay dividends well into this community's future. So what's the future of this plan look like? That's the next question. We're kicking off an effort that will likely not wrap up for another year. We as an organization are making a concerted effort to tie decision-making directly to our financial outlook and our priorities. We're also working within departments to craft our own 3-year plans that will set the stage for the next round of strategic organizational planning work. And to date, 24 departments now have their own 3-year plans. We're continuing to select baseline and contiguous measures of productivity with an eye towards said measures, along with realistic benchmarks to determine the efficacy of our work and to take note of our direction as an organization. Kind of wrap it up, I think on time, maybe a little ahead. We've long stated that this plan is more compass than report card. It helps us to remain well-oriented in spite of externalities and points the way toward the achievement of what we've set out to do. I thank you for your continued interest in the work of strategy and hope you'll see fit to continue to buy into this refreshed plan as a renewed strategic planning process that promises to challenge the norms and focus deeply about the decisions we make and the ramifications thereof. And with that, I thank you sincerely for your time and I'm happy to entertain any further questions.
Input from commissioners. Melissa?
Yeah, I'm looking at goals like good neighbors and affordable housing, and I don't see much mention of delving deep into the impact that the student population has on people. So maybe as we refresh, and this is certainly something that plays into the land use plan, we need to consider that factor and how, we can kind of affect that factor in making lives better for our regular year-round residents and people who actually work and live in this community.
So maybe state explicitly.
Yeah, just explicitly, constantly explore how, I mean, I
The
think.
great student population needs into the overall.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to have a cohesive community in an active neighborhood when it's, highly gentrified with a population that's extremely transient. And that's the impact I'm seeing in neighborhoods that I represent, on top of just the physical impact. Population and cars and trash cans and things like that.
But yeah, hang on to that because when we do the bigger refresh up, could be something we could.
Yeah.
Hold in. Ovita?
In the same, not the same vein that Commissioner Link is talking about, there is a population of homeless UGA students. They're going from couch to car to couch. I don't know whether people are too embarrassed to talk about it, but it's a reality. So everything, I think when we talk about the refresh, I think people have one side of the story that Commissioner Link is talking about, but there's another side that there are homeless UGA students. And we never talk about it. UGA never talks about it, but we'll never really solve this problem unless we put it all together. So I don't know where it fits at, but I'm bringing this up at every public place or platform because it's a true fact. And it's going to become a problem if we don't address it sooner than later.
We might want to talk to some of the folks we know over the Fanning Institute because they're certainly conscious of that and have been public about wanting to make sure they support that. They've specifically got a project for those folks who age out of the foster care apparatus, which, when you turn 18, you're an adult theoretically, right? Or at least legally speaking. And so they've worked a lot on that. So I think we could probably talk more with them about it.
And I do, and like I said, I appreciate that. And I do think that this is the setting, because I didn't know about that, Kelly. And this is even more of a reason that we do need to work with the University of Georgia, so at some point in some place. What is CAPER? CAPER?
Consolidated Annual Planning and
Performance Evaluation Report.
Performance Evaluation Report. It's an annual report we have to do to HUD for our CDBG and our home funds. So every year at the end of our action plan year, we have to submit the CAPER report to them as our performance for the year prior.
Okay.
100% knew I was going to get that wrong. That's why.
And you know it's something, so.
And there's a link to the most recent CAPER on the ACD website.
Okay.
So every year it's published. It has to be published annually in the newspaper and on our website.
Yeah, thank you.
Dexter?
And I think to Commissioner Link and Commissioner Thorne's point, I think we're gonna have a conversation with UGA to how much are they gonna grow from a population standpoint and what they're gonna do on their own campus housing. And I do know a new dorm be coming into play. But I think we got to start having some serious conversation with them about how we can partner.
Right.
Say when it comes to what they're doing on campus and how much they're gonna grow. I'm not sure what those numbers are, what they may look like over the next 5 to 10 years, but it's gonna have an impact on our community as we move forward. And then secondly, to Commissioner Thornton's point, we also have a group of K-12 students that are homeless. I dealt with that a lot when I worked for CCSD, and probably Mayor, you did too at some point. But at the time before I left CCSD, at least the number that we had, about 250 kids that were homeless. They were living on somebody's couch, living in a hotel, or they might have been in other counties living. And we had to educate them, so we had to go to the bus line to pick them up, bring them back to Clarke County and educate them. So I think there's a whole plethora of stuff. And again, maybe have a conversation with CCSD about what we're gonna do with that from the housing perspective and what we're gonna do. I think our land use is coming to play now, and then how we're gonna use whatever available land that we got if we're gonna build a so-called missing middle or affordable home. So I think we got a lot we gotta unpack. What we're gonna do for our future.
Commissioner Fisher, the university and CCSD are part of our future land use plan steering committee. The mayor has appointed 2 folks from both of those institutions.
That's right. I'm happy to report also that somewhere in the mayor's stack of items to sign is a memo of understanding between Athens-Clarke County, CCSD, and the Boys and Girls Club to share data, not freely, but share data related to youth measures. This is a good way to put it. So that's going to help tremendously.
Jesse?
Yeah, I just want to clarify, is the slides that are in this presentation, is this going to be the new presentation of the strategic plan, or are we still going to have that static document as it was?
I'm looking, since you brought it up, I'm looking for input on that. We have a very talented performance management analyst in our office. We're only in office with 5, 4.5 really. And we struggle, frankly, with ways to present this information quickly and robustly to the public. And so we've been having some discussions around that in recent weeks, and so we're kind of open to suggestion. Talking points, blurbs, we think might be helpful. We do have the performance dashboard. It is a little busy and it is limited in the number of measures that we're able to really disseminate information on. And so if y'all have any ideas of how to make this information clear to folks beyond the static document, I'm very open to hearing it.
Joseph, just your question now, and maybe kind of break open a larger piece of the conversation. I sort of like the idea of maybe having a sort of 2-layer approach where we say, here's the big picture version. In some ways, like we've got the budgeted brief book. And then, hey, if you want a deeper dive into a bunch of the performance measures, here's a link to that.
We'll be voting on this in May, and then you're asking if this will be replace the other strategic plan.
Yeah, I guess basically I was just asking, like, the thing we're voting on in May, is it a document where this is the text and it's replacing that old one?
No, so you've got 2 attachments for agenda item. One is a strike through copy of the old plan with, kind of with the new adjustments noted, and then one is a clean version of that. That's what you'll be voting on. I'm sorry, I misunderstood your question.
Well, just one thing I'd like to point out, it's sort of a minor tweak in language, but I think it's meaningful, and I brought this up at the retreat too, is under good neighbors, which is slide 3 on this work session, but the summary, and I recall this is how it was also kind of like reduced when we combine things in the retreat, says proactively reform systems of accountability to reduce jail recidivism rates and plan for transition to returning residents. I would strongly encourage us to keep the language of reduce jail and supervised population instead of jail recidivism rates. Recidivism rates is part of that. It falls under the umbrella of that, but it's also about first-time arrests. It's also about length of sentences. It's also about length of time people sit in jail. And so there's all kinds of ramifications around cost to the county and staffing proportions and impacts on people's lives with, how long they're in jail and what sentence they get. And so I hope that we can retain that slight change, the lack of change in language to after that.
So almost if you just said jail population, comma, recidivism rates, and plan for transition and returning residents.
Yeah, I mean, what it says in the original strategic plan is jail and supervised population. So that covers people who are like out on probation and what the length of their probation is and all that stuff too.
I know that Good Neighbors seems to be more directed to public safety, but I would like to somewhere, if it's not there, include I would like it spelled out that we will intentionally work or attempt to work collaboratively with UGA and Clarke County School District to address homeless issues or any other issues that overlap, something like that.
That collaborative efforts,
Yeah.
phraseology, sized area.
Yeah, I want to spell that out because, again, I don't think people know about the kids in school, and I know they don't know about UGA. And so every time we get the negative feedback about what homeless people are doing, there's another group of people that is catching a bad rap also. So we need to let people know there's another group also out there.
You could have there, with nonprofits, CCSD, UGA, and other entities in there. Can I ask that these, this PowerPoint and the last one were not the final versions that are being, the one I'm looking at is not the final version. You guys sent them out, but could you update the FTP site so that, and maybe the public site too, to make sure, I don't know what's there, but I checked on the last one and it was still the.
I'm on the public site and it's not updated yet.
Okay, so update the public site and the FTP site with updated PowerPoints.
Thanks, Kara. Other questions? Joseph, thanks a bunch. You all appreciate it. All right, we're going to transition in a minute to the American Rescue Plan Act Homeless Award recommendations. Alejandra and Marcy at HCD.
Sorry about that.
They're gonna be up here.
Good, how are you doing?
I'm just,
No, I just.
Just kidding.
You get that.
For cheers. Go for it.
Here.
At least it was on Instagram. Fine.
Hey, I'll switch with you.
listen,
Number sandwich again.
are you free?
Oh, double sandwich.
Hey, that's a good idea.
It's all.
Fridays are best for me.
I'm gonna share. Go back, sorry. Go ahead. Click back in. Yep. Oh, yeah.
At least you get something. Sorry, I was trying to like negotiate. Oh, yeah.
It's a little bit down right up there. Actually, on that next. Let's see. This will be a good.
All righty? Okay.
All right, Alejandra, good to see you.
And you too. I am Alejandra Calva. I'm the Community Impact Administrator housed at HCD. I'm here with my colleague Marcy Irwin. She's a Community Development Administrator, also in our department. And we are here to talk about our ARPA homelessness funding recommendation. We are going to give you a quick overview of the ARPA homelessness funding to date, then talk about the Athens Homeless Coalition's role as our ARPA homelessness advisory group in this process. And then we're going to get into the meat of this, which is a summary of the applications we received and our funding recommendations. So up here on the screen, you'll see just a quick summary of 3 decisions that this body made in the last couple of years that got us to where we are today. In March of 2022, you allocated $5 million of ARPA to address homelessness. In October of last year, you approved a CDO that included the acceptance of the strategic plan to reduce and face homelessness. You also directed us as staff to create an RFP for ARPA homelessness funds. You allocated $195,000 from the ARPA homelessness bucket towards the physical health care of the homeless. And you also designated $195,000 of ARPA workforce funds towards partnerships for employment activities, specifically targeting those experiencing homelessness. And then in January of this year, you passed another CDO that included the approval of the Athens Homeless Coalition scope of work and budget for about $1.08 million. You also awarded $550,000 to Salvation Army, authorized $500,000 to ACC Gov's own warming/emergency shelter plan. And most important to this presentation is that you approved the release of $2.83 million of ARPA homelessness funds through a competitive RFP. And you also directed the Homeless Coalition to participate in the review of the RFPs. So up here on the screen, you're going to see 6 names. These are the individuals that the board of the Athens Homeless Coalition, which by the way was just formed in January of this year, they were designated to help us in staff at HCD to review all the proposals and to develop the funding recommendations we are presenting to you today. Every member of that review board read through and agreed to a conflict of interest policy that basically just stated that if any of those individuals had any perceived conflict or any real conflict with any of the applications, that they should remove themselves or at least make it known. We did have one committee member abstain from reviewing the Advantage Behavioral Health Barrier Shelter proposal due to that conflict of interest, but everybody else agreed that they did not have any conflicts.
Okay. So I'm Marcy Irwin, Community Development Administrator, and I'm going to walk you through kind of what happened with the RFP. So let's see here. As a reminder, you know, we had clumped all of the activities into 3 separate RFPs, one for low barrier shelter, one for supportive services, and one for unsheltered initiatives. Applicants were able to apply for multiple RFPs, but they could submit no more than 3 proposals across the 3 categories. We did, as a note, there were a couple of agencies that did submit multiple proposals. And this is the evaluation criteria that was used by the staff and the advisory committee. We all scored using the same review matrix, and the results are an average of all those scores that you'll see on the next slide. I will say that, no, we'll go on. I'm sure the questions will come up. Okay, so overview of applications received. There was a total of 2.83 million identified in the RFP release. 11 applications were received with a total request of 6.5 and some change $1 million. As you can see, we only had 2.83 available. We had a funding gap of 3.7 million that was requested in excess of what was available to fund. Here's a quick overview of the apps received. We received 5 low barrier shelter applications. One was a congregate type shelter, and 4 of those were non-congregate. There was no delineation or request or requirement for either or. This is just a matter of note here. Those total proposals were $3.8 million, $3 billion. Supportive service, we had 4 proposals. One was for a diversion rapid exit program, and there were 3 workforce development / partnerships for employment applications received. Those proposals totaled a little over $3 million. And finally, we received 2 proposals under the unsheltered initiatives category. One was for physical healthcare services, and the other was for housing surges for encampments. Those $384,455. Yes, ma'am.
Question. I'm still trying to wrap my head on the housing surges for encampment. Could you define that one again for me?
Yes, so that what we were looking for was a proposal for how an agency would address encampments, shelter, sanctioned or unsanctioned, throughout the county, and how they would address going in and helping those folks find housing. So it's like a targeted team, like team of teams, like they have specific people that go in, do the assessment, they have resource to do landlord engagement. So it's kind of a focused effort, similar to how we closed out the sanctioned encampment, that kind of approach to identify like encampments that we find throughout the county.
So this would be like, perhaps right now, the street outreach folks are kind of doing that somewhat.
Yes,
But
yes. So now street outreach goes out and they'll make referrals. This would be a team that goes out and they work closely with those to make a rapid transition into another place out of unsheltered homelessness. That makes sense? Yes, sir.
The low barrier, I did talk with Manager Jones today about it on the low barrier for Mitchell Bridge. My understanding, this could be part of the funding that we had already provided for them. It's going to be added funding for them to build out the rest of that project.
Yes, that's what was proposed. Yes, sir.
I got a question on the unsheltered initiatives with the 2 proposals. When and I didn't see the RFP, but when that RFP went out, was the wording exactly what HUD recommended, or was it modified?
It was open to interpretation. So we were going with the HUD recommended, like if they wanted to use that, but we weren't, because this is not HUD funding. They're not required to meet that definition of of unsheltered homelessness. But that was a guide point, I guess, for this, because ARPA doesn't have a definition associated with its funding.
And I guess my struggle is some things we do freely because it's ARPA, we have this freedom, and then other things we tighten up on, because I've had 2 agencies working with health. And because of the interpretation, they didn't feel like they were qualified to, for the unsheltered initiatives. So either we're going to do this like whatever, or do it differently. I do think both of these agencies, and I'm not even mentioning their names, but both of these agencies are already doing healthcare, but they did not feel like they were qualified because of the wording and their interpretation. Just information.
Marcy and Alejandra, it might be helpful just to say, kind of in this process, did HCD provide the same kind of technical assistance that you would provide, say, through the CDBG process, where you kind of have that open door to agencies and say, hey, if you have questions about even what this means, can we have a sit down?
And maybe I should have directed them to you, but we were getting a lot of emails about some other stuff. But I do remember that now that
So we did provide some technical assistance to several, there were applications that were unsubmitted that were clearly for healthcare. I did not speak directly with them, but I think Alejandra may have provided some TA to some of those agencies. If you want to speak
We
to that.
did. And I mean, technical assistance included, we did a live and recorded webinar where we just went through pretty in-depth explanation of what the RFP was, what the types of activities, much more detailed than what we all did. Right now, we did technical assistance via email, phone call. We did even some online meetings with agencies. I want to say that every agency that actually submitted a proposal touched base with us at least once. Marcy also mentioned we had several other agencies reach out, had a lot of questions for us. We saw some of them actually begin the application because we can see it on our software, but they never submitted it. Others that just didn't apply. And unfortunately, we can't go much more beyond that. I hear you on clarifying those.
I just probably should have followed up my own self. But
I will say, we can see that there was an application started, but the system does not allow us to see what they were working on. So until they actually click submit in our system, we can't access their work in progress. So
See somebody's hanging out there.
yeah, so they have to fill out like, this is our summary, this is our agency name, but the guts of the application we can't see.
So I noticed we had 3 applicants that did not get it, lack of organizational capacity, experience managing federal funding, unclear programs. I think going to Commissioner Thornton's point, because several of these agencies have applied before, and pretty much the same thing. So is there anything that we do internally to try to say, hey, these are some of the things y'all need to improve on, these are some of the things that you all need to do to maybe help the process the next time that you apply?
Absolutely.
And actually the 3, and we haven't even gotten to the slides, but the 3 applications you're referring to, those specific agencies, as you said, that had applied to other funding opportunities. We actually reviewed with them their previous applications to other funding, specifically called out some areas of improvement. They didn't quite just get there. Particularly, again, we had a lot of competition from the different agencies, but that's another level of technical assistance we do. And we offer to every applicant, including the ones that we reviewed today. They can contact us. We can go through, again, what could have been stronger, how they could improve for next time around.
I just know, I believe, they do some great work.
Yeah.
But when we start getting to these federal funding, then they don't tend to get funded, but we see them doing great work within the community, but they don't get these funds, and I'm not sure what we can do to make those things happen.
Well, Commissioner Fisher, we have the nonprofit capacity building program, and I would hope that we would encourage those kind of folks to apply for that.
Yes.
And then maybe that's a way for us to kind of help them further.
Yeah.
Because federal funding is a challenge for a lot of people.
Yeah. In fact, one of the 2 agencies that was recommended not for funding is part of the Cultivating Nonprofit Capacity Program currently. So that's one of the areas we're working on with them more specifically.
Can I ask a question about your next slide?
Sure. Okay, I'll speak a while.
On the next slide, so.
This slide here?
Yeah, this one
Okay.
here. So can we get, and I see the recommendations you made, but it'd be helpful, I think, for me, maybe for some others too, to see maybe like a paragraph or two about what each of these recommendations.
Those are, there's a proposal summary included on the agenda item.
Is there, okay.
It's an attachment. I think it's attachment 2.
Is there, okay.
Yeah, and there's, it basically is the project narrative from the applications themselves. And
Okay.
then like a summary of the leveraging and the funding requests and how their budget broke down.
The outcomes maybe of what they're expecting from these dollars. Is that
Yes,
something on there?
if they put it in there. Some of the applications were not very clear.
Okay.
So, and that's reflected in the scoring.
So then number
See what
7,
I'm asking. Just what are you gonna be doing? What's your outcomes and how are we gonna evaluate?
number
He
7,
asked for that.
that's the one
But yes.
in healthcare. So what are we expecting from the Athens Wellness Clinic and who are they?
So the Athens Wellness Clinic is an agency that has been funded in the past with CDBG funds, I believe. They provide healthcare like services to unsheltered homeless.
That used to be called.
Formerly known as the Nurses Clinic.
That is
It's the Nurses Clinic, just the new name.
Arch.
okay. No, I know them as the nurses clinic.
Yeah.
So I will take all of my concerns back because that's the one I'm concerned about.
On this slide, I want a little column there that tells me which of the things up above, local area, supportive and unsheltered, just on that. Some of them I could figure out.
Okay.
Some of them I couldn't figure out.
Right.
easily.
Okay,
So I mean, it says local area.
That'll be in that attachment, I would imagine.
yes.
Well, legit, I mean, you could put like two, or even
Clarify in the chart.
Clarify
Yeah,
for sure in the
clarify.
chart. And
After the name of the
Yeah,
organization,
right,
just
right.
LB, just little initials.
sure, absolutely, we can. That was interesting because we had so many different types of activities. It reminded me of our CDBG application, where you can have a lot of different types.
Mhm.
And I didn't even think
Yeah.
delineated on this slide.
So, we just sort of discussed, so we got a total 6.5 million, but actually we're only gonna give out 2.8, right?
Right, the 6.58 is what they requested
Okay,
of those applications. And we didn't have that much money to give them. We had to.
the right is.
So on the right is the funding, this is the recommended, and then that little percentage is the percentage of what they asked for. So like if you see at the top, ABHS encampment response, it says 200,000 in that far right corner, 100%. We are recommending 100% of their request.
Okay, then you got, okay,
Does that make sense? And then
okay.
and just for a point of clarification on number 5, you know, it's got that up to this, but no less than that. That is because after the RFP closed, we've discovered that we've realized there's about $70,000-ish of ARPA funding left over in some of our other, from some of our other closed contracts that we're actually closing out. We will just reapply it, so it's in the same bucket. Do you want?
Specifically for homelessness, right?
Specifically for homelessness. These were ARPA homeless activities that have closed or completed, and we're in the process of closing them out, so we're not sure exactly how much that's gonna be. But we know there'll be some there. This will prevent us from having to come back for another meeting and help us make the deadline of the contracting by the end of the year. Because otherwise it has to go for another RFP. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, good. Yes.
To make sure I'm clear and understand this, so on the Economic Justice Coalition,
Mhm.
you got 400,000.
Right.
You're only gonna get 44% of that.
So they're getting 400. It's 44% of their request of 905,000.
Yeah.
Go ahead, John.
But that doesn't equal, so basically, we're taking out $500,000 of what was requested. So number 8, they requested 900,000, they're getting 400. So that's $500,000 less. What's the other, that doesn't equal the 3.7 million though.
3.7 million.
Just if everybody's got 100% except for that.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you,
6.5 includes what's on the next page.
yes, sorry. So
I think that's
sorry.
where the.
We had to split it because we wanted you to be able to see it.
Oh.
So, and of course I can't see the whole thing because it's, So, sorry. So these are the three applications that were not recommended for funding. So these totals of their requested amount is included in that 6 million total that was requested overall as all the applications. I'm sorry, that is confusing. Was the intention there.
The other page, the previous page.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. And this is just a suggestion as we move forward, and it's a suggestion to Commissioner Myers and Commissioner Taylor, because you're doing the work.
Right.
I hope that there's conversations as we move forward with Divas That Win, because that's a work initiative, and Economic Justice Coalition. We've got stuff all over the page, but maybe everything that's working, maybe there's 1 or 2 meetings a year. So and get a
Yeah, we just actually had a pre-meeting, and they have this really graphic that I wish we had for youth development and for what other area? Homelessness, actually, that showed like this, it showed like all the areas that we're working with second chance employment, and then it was like you could link to it, in there. And I was bringing up in that one, some of the information that Commissioner Fisher and I were learning at the DPI about the, number of young men who are unemployed and then getting into gangs. And we're like, oh, workforce, youth. So this tie over with this population, and then with what we're doing with the youth. I mean, I personally would really like to see that all kind of working together.
I think that will help us in the future as we move and not have everything so scattered.
Yeah.
Just for point place, but appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right.
Any other questions before I move to the next? So as we briefly talked about this before, these are the 3 proposals that were recommended not to be funded by the review panel. Some of the issues that were brought up were lack of organizational capacity, unclear program design, and then project feasibility because of the timeliness that we need to get this fund expended. Those were some of the concerns. And all right, so here we are at next steps. We'll have the agenda setting meeting for this action on April 16th, the voting session on May 7th, and then we would begin initiating contracting on May 10th. I will say that we've already started working up some templates for ARPA funding for the contracts to help expedite that process. And then we have to have these funds under contract by the end of this calendar year. I hit the wrong button. I don't know what it's gonna do, but I hit it. I'm trying to.
That may be it.
That's it. Questions or comments?
Any further questions?
Look at it. All right.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Marcy, Alejandra, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Uncle Don.
Oh, shit. Got one more.
Sorry, guys.
Oh,
Thank you.
let it go. Good. I guess.
Because they're all used to now.
Coffee and a syringe. Trying to inject it straight. I have to wait for the digestive process. I gotta worry.
This is me. That's probably you.
So we did. And on this next presentation, don't mind.
I do.
I gotta go get Gigi. Yes. No, Gigi, I completely got Gigi's got.
You come in North Adams. One of these.
An employee.
Okay.
I guess traffic stuff.
Yes, me.
Email about all that.
I know family comes to us.
Yeah, they don't. So
Full of noodles.
But it's all still.
All right, look, technology is working for us. All right, last presentation of the day is a set of community identified priorities. Is the East Downtown TAD, which I think is probably the first of several of these TAD areas that you're moving into.
Yes. So we'll talk a little bit about the community identified priority list that has come out of the East Downtown TAD Advisory Committee based on some community input. So our purpose today is to talk a little bit about that TAD community engagement process. East Downtown Athens TAD is the first to go through the process, but it will apply to all 6 TADs. And then we'll also talk about the list that has been shaped by the community input in East Downtown and that is going to be presented before you. So here's a little history overall of the TADs and the East Downtown TAD specifically. So as you remember, in late 2020, the 6 TADs were created and approved by this body. In 2021, the Mayor and Commission voted to create an ordinance which created a community advisory committee for each of the 6 TADs. So the committees range from 6 to 7 members. They're property owners, residents, business owners that have an interest in that TAD and a connection to that TAD. Mayor Girtz appointed the different individuals that will be members of all those committees, including the East Downtown TAD. And then this past February the 6th, Commissioner Taylor presented, or I don't know the right word, made a motion for 70% of the yearly increment from the East Downtown TAD to be distributed to the East Athens neighborhood. So here is a map of the East Downtown TAD. In brief, it is on the downtown side of going down to the river. It stretches to the north over kind of along the Greenway over to the Charm. And then it stretches across the river and up through the residential inner East Athens neighborhood, up towards the East Athens Community Center, Hurd Park, the Vine Street, sort of the triangle, and onward that direction. When the TAD was created, the East Athens neighbors requested to be part of the TAD. For the most part, the other TADs do not include residential properties.
I have a quick question about the map, because you've got 5 labels that are the same. It's the number.
That was me, sorry.
Okay.
I pulled it straight from the website, and when you're looking at the website, I think they just want to show you all of the places of why it's the East End. I don't know why it's that way.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I was just.
That was me.
Sorry. I know it's a lot of labeling.
It's the number of the TAD.
I understand that, but it seemed to me that it might have been trying to say the District 4 part of this TAD, the District 4 part, the District 2, but
It's just labeling.
I mean, it covers 3 different commissioner districts. And that has nothing to do with the different labels that are on there.
No.
That's right. So each of the
Sorry.
6 TADs is labeled as a TAD. So for example, East Downtown is TAD number 4.
You got it, Nikki.
I know. I put Elk in a bad spot. I'm sorry.
So just if you,
So here's the community engagement process. We came up with this process because when a project is coming into a TAD or community members are interested in seeing certain projects be funded by TAD dollars, we needed a process for it to go through, so that input was collected and there was sort of a process of deliberation about it. So the first.
Oh,
Sorry, go ahead.
When did it start? I'm sorry. When did it start, the intake process?
Didn't get your process. When did it start?
Really, East Athens is this initial one. We probably started drafting this process earlier earlier last year, this time last year. We began sort of drafting and thinking about what would each of the steps be. And for the community engagement section, public meetings and survey to gather community input, we began that, and we'll go through a timeline. This is kind of the overall process, and we've got a slide coming for when did this happen in East Athens. So East Athens is our first group that is going through it, and we have 2 of the other TADs that are in various stages of it.
And the mall TAD didn't have the same process because it included the school district. It's a different process because of that, but it's the only one with the school district. So this is what the process is going to look like for the other 4 TADs. 6, we got 6 total, right? One's the mall.
For all 6 of the TADs, because the mall TAD, the mall is just on those parcels. There are additional parcels that are not currently tied in the current TAD project of the mall redevelopment.
So we'll look at this process for, say, where the hotel is or where the Best Buy used to be, where the Goodwill is. So many parcels are outside of the community benefits agreement that we signed.
Okay.
Yes.
This will come into play.
So for example, during the mall, this process was wrapped up in all the negotiations. What will the community benefits be? What would people like to see? What will be part of it? And actually for all 6, so notwithstanding the mall redevelopment, which that became baked into the pie as the pie was being baked. This will be ready. That way, when a developer comes and says, we're interested in building XYZ into this TAD, there's the ability for the TAD advisory committee or a staff to say, yes, here are the community priorities for this area. It's been prioritized into a list that's been gathered through a public input process and reviewed, recommended, and then reviewed and voted upon by the mayor and commission.
Thank you.
So the first step in the process is a series of public meetings and surveys to gather community input on specific projects and like priority interests within that TAD. Then that information goes to the TAD advisory committee, which creates a community identified project list within your 4 areas that you designated for TAD funds. So affordable housing, CCSD and youth development, economic development partnerships, and infrastructure. So they all sort of fall into those categories. Then staff, that's the step we are on right now for East Downtown. Staff presents this community identified project list to the mayor and commission at a work session. The next step in your agenda setting and then your voting session will be the steps that involve the mayor and commission are in lighter blue. The mayor and commission will accept the community identified priority list. Staff will take that list and begin to research information and options to accomplish the project, the top project that's in the priority list, report back to the TAD advisory committee. And then if the TAD advisory committee recommends it, staff will then submit an agenda item to you, the mayor and commission, for the concept of that priority project. Y'all will have a chance to discuss, deliberate, approve, modify, or deny that concept for the first priority project that comes through. Then staff will collaborate with departments, appropriate departments that may be engaged, consultants that may be able to help draft a budget and do the construction for that first priority project. Then staff will present the design, the budget, construction timeline to that TAD advisory committee. The TAD advisory committee will have a chance to review it. And then an agenda item will come in front of you that has all the details for that item. And again, you'll have a chance to accept it, modify, and deny that project. So that's sort of the overall process. Right now, we're on step number 3 for East Downtown.
So using this process, last week, 2 weeks ago, Mr. Davenport and I were over at the TAD, the East Athens TAD. Is that the first box?
Lexington.
Yeah, the Lexington TAD, was that?
Yes, so they're in box number 1. And Newton Bridge is also at that stage. So Lexington and Newton right now are going through the community input process. I think Newton has sort of had maybe their first session for prioritization where the committee has taken the input and is beginning to prioritize.
So when, Paul Newton is mine, so when do they meet? Well, I guess would it be helpful if you maybe send us some of the commissioners that TAD is meeting, that they want to sit in on? How do we know when the TAD meetings are meeting?
It'll be on the public calendar. Yeah.
And I know, I never look at the public calendar.
Yeah.
I just don't.
So Caitlin Dye, my teammate who coordinates the TADs, I'll ask her, do you want her to add all of you to all of the invites for the TAD advisory committees?
I saw that's how I live my
You
life.
can sign up for the text alerts.
Yeah.
Through NNI.
Or email, they can email or text you.
Okay. And I don't want to put you all out. I really don't.
No, that's okay. We can just add the whole commission onto each one of the invites when we're sending the invites.
It's the one that's our district.
No, I think I can work with Commissioner Fisher and we can make sure that he's on the appropriate end.
You can add me too.
Individuals.
Yeah.
Y'all are welcome to attend.
Yeah. Sign up for all public meetings on NNI and you.
We could have a little session on technology at one of our retreats.
No, commissioners didn't get that information, so we're really just out here on our own.
Well, I'm
I mean,
not.
some I signed up for like 10 years ago.
That's fair. Kelly, I was not a part of the Newton Ridge, TAD selection. Is it too late for me to recommend somebody?
So those are all mayoral appointments and there are people who roll off currently. So I'll let you know when folks are rolling off.
If you give me the list, I don't even know who's on. I guess that's, so if you could even send me that.
I'll get the list of all of them there.
Okay.
So here's a little bit about the East Downtown engagement. So the community input open house sessions were held in mid to late May this past year. We try to invite as many people as possible, pushed it out via news flash. We sent them out to emails. We made lists of houses of worship that were in this TAD and sent them out emails to invite people to come to the public input session. There was a postcard for the in-person sessions and the online survey that was sent to each residential address within the TAD. And then there were yard signs posted at strategic intersections and corners all within the East Downtown during the month of May so that people were aware of the input sessions and of the online survey. Then over the summer between June and September, that we had the advisory committee go ahead and meet with different ACC Gov departments. So they were aware of different projects that were already sort of in the queue for East Downtown in case there might be overlap or in case the advisory committee wanted to prioritize maybe leveraging TAD funds with funds like T-SPLOST funds or SPLOST funds. So Leisure Services came to meet with them. I believe Stormwater met with them. Trying to think who else was in the group. There was a series of so they were aware. The SPLOST office met with them just to make them aware of what was already happening so that they could see what some of the opportunities were along with the priorities that they were hearing from the community. In mid to late October, Dr. Shanice Allen and the Inner East Athens neighbors invited Caitlin Dye and I to attend a meeting to share some information about the TADs and to hear people's input for the East Downtown TAD. I would say about, thanks to Commissioners Thornton and Commissioner Taylor for being there. I think there were maybe 25 people that attended that meeting. There were a lot of questions and a lot of input. So that was, I think, a very good meeting on the whole. And then by early December, the advisory committee took all of the input that had been collected and began to start thinking and talking through prioritizing the input that had been received. At the end of February, the TAD advisory committee finalized that list, which you'll see here in just a moment. So here are the top 10 priorities. And so the first thing to note is as of February 20th, the East Downtown TAD account, the increment balance is $540,696.01. And as you can see, the committee prioritized affordable housing first. You see apartments, homeownership, and support for existing homeowners, things like repairs and such. CCSD and youth development was the second priority identified. Healthcare and wellness, options to improve trades and like hands-on skills for youth. Walking tracks around Herd Park Field and other improvements to the field at Herd Park.
renovations and updates to the Miriam Moore campus, which houses, I think, the nurses clinic and the EADC. It's kind of between the Herd Park Community Center and the East Athens Dance Center. And then economic development opportunities. A grocery store was a priority, and then options to improve hands-on, like trades education for adults as well. Any questions?
So I could mention this now or later, but here we are. Because you've got the dollar figure up there. And so about $500,000 is accumulated, and that's over, I guess, about 3 years.
Yes.
So, the function of a TAD, as we've all seen, is that, what we do is we have a base year of 2020. And so any new increment is going to continue to go into this pot. And so even thinking very conservatively, we know over that total 20-year horizon, we're going to have quite a bit more if we have no new construction, just from the increase in valuation and construction that's already happened. We're going to have $2 or $3 or $4 million. And so one thing that I might want to suggest to the body, and maybe this could be some of that coming staff work, is contemplating some kind of borrowing so that we can leverage more than just $500,000, because we know that there's more that's going to be put into this pot over these coming years. And so that could look like just traditional borrowing. This may not be enough money to do municipal bond financing. We probably want a kind of much greater dollar value, because at least in my layperson's knowledge of that, you need somewhere north of $10 million to really make the numbers run if you're doing municipal bonds, just given the financing costs and lawyers' fees and the like. Or we've sometimes even borrowed internally. So borrowing from the Public Utilities Fund, you've got a healthy bank account. So those are some of the things that I might suggest to colleagues and to staff we look at so that we can get more on the ground quickly.
So this five is that, it says East Downtown Athens. So is that dollar amount the total pot, or is it going to be 70% of that dollar?
That is the increment that has been generated since the TAD was created. So there was a base value when the TAD was created, and that is the amount of increased value or increment that has piled up or accumulated since that base value was set.
And just
That's 100%.
That's 100%.
Okay.
So 70%.
Total value.
That's what I was saying.
Okay. So East Downtown, next steps, we looked at that big process, and then this is the next steps for downtown. The idea would be that staff would research options to accomplish the first priority project, which was affordable apartments. Report on findings to the TAD Advisory Committee, findings, options, things like that. If the TAD Advisory Committee recommends it, some of the options, then we would write an agenda item and present it to this body for the concept of the priority project. You would have a chance to modify, approve, deny the concept for that number one project. Then staff would work together with appropriate departments, in this case for affordable apartments, maybe housing and community development, or maybe, I don't know, different community partners that deal in housing in our community, and or consultants to draft a budget and a plan for the construction of that type of a project. Then we would present that to the advisory committee. If the advisory committee wanted to recommend it forth to you, we would do an agenda item. It would come forth to you. You would have a chance to approve, modify, deny, and then kind of move on. Of course, some things to note is $540,000 it's a lot of money. But when it comes to constructing affordable apartments, you're not going to be able to do that with that amount of money. So just thinking about how, different things to leverage. And then with the whole list of projects that was done, the idea would be to work them in priority order, because some things will maybe not have sufficient funding, some feasibility, maybe some challenges, but just kind of working through that project. And then to make any changes to that community identified list that the East Downtown group has put together, they would need to come back. If they wanted to modify that list, they would come back through you for you to review it and accept it.
Quick question. So one thing that was on their list was a grocery store. And so there's a grocery store there, could that owner participate in this program to upgrade the grocery store and really make it a benefit to the community with fresh fruit and vegetables and all those things? So the person who owns that grocery store right now, could they benefit from this tag?
They could. I mean, there's several options, right? This is the sort of the community identified priority list.
Right.
But a developer or a grocery store owner that wants to make some modifications to their property building, make some capital improvements, they can come in with an application and then it will go through the application process, which was similar to the mall process.
But I'm a little confused on that. Let's say the grocery store example, because that's good, because when we looked at the mall, the TAD money needed to be going to the infrastructure, to the public infrastructure. So like in a grocery store, because this would apply to all these TADs, right? So if that existing grocery store wanted to redo some stuff and, refresh the inside, build it up, can they use the government money for that? Or is it just for like the sidewalks around the grocery store or?
It's the but for. So the question would be, I think we would need to talk with our TAD council, but just thinking about other projects we've discussed, it would be the but for portion. Like if there were some equipment that they would not otherwise be able to afford to upgrade, or if they needed space for that additional equipment that they were going to put in to be able to expand what they were offering.
But even if it's like, because again, with the TAD one, with the mall, I thought all of it was sort of like, it wasn't buildings itself, it was this.
We do have to be cognizant of the gratuities clause.
Yeah.
Of what?
The gratuities clause.
So how would something, on a private entity like that, how would that like work? I mean, there was someone over on the east side who was talking to us, who was a property owner. That's where I'm a little confused about it in terms of, could we get some kind of like example to, the grocery store seems really like clear cut to me. So like if you were doing a new heating and air, that doesn't seem like would apply, would it?
Is there an example out there of
Yeah.
a grocery store?
Yeah, that's something that we could get
Yeah.
we want a kind of a scan of some Georgia TAD, and some of the eligible expenditures from that.
Yeah, how they've used that TAD money to attract something like a grocery store.
Or if the grocery store wanted to expand to a space next to it.
Right.
Or they wanted more coolers for fresh food versus pantry food.
Right.
To have a healthier option.
That's all.
That's right. Those are the kind of examples that we would need. And it would go from being the ninth choice by virtue of it being done faster. I mean, some of these choices that could be done faster as a renovation versus a nothing to something.
But for example, we've talked about lab space. Would development of lab space be eligible for TAD funds?
Lab space?
Lab space, right? I mean, because it's more expensive to develop than just a flex space or a warehouse space. And the TAD attorney has said yes, but for the support of the TAD funds, that lab space would not be able to be developed.
Yes, I guess I just.
So that is an
advice on
HVAC
that.
violation.
But is it lab space that we would own versus just rent out the facilities versus the other? So.
But I mean, like the mall, it is a private development and there are funds that are going into it, but it's but for a piece, right?
But isn't it just the sidewalks and stuff? I just don't want to give community members, and again, forget about this one, the wrong idea about what the money could be used for. That's all. I just want to.
Yeah, any project that comes through will go through the TAD attorney for sure.
No, I think Commissioner Myers, you're thinking about signaling to the community what's eligible, what's not ahead of time.
Right. Yeah.
We can certainly give you some more information. We'll be prepared to answer that question at agenda setting. But the key, one of the keys here is that we're coming to the commission asking for y'all to accept, approve, deny, modify this list.
Process.
process and the
Process
process,
and
correct?
list. Mhm.
And this list is coming to us from the community.
Right,
saying,
right.
Here are our priorities.
Yeah.
And let's just play this out. If you say we accept or approve this list, staff is taking that as apartments and affordable housing is the number one thing that you want us to work on.
Yeah, well, I don't know why apartments is up there. I just want to
Right,
be
so-
real clear.
Right, so, this is what we heard and this is what we're bringing back. That's what we promised, so.
I mean, I think that, there's a lot of the community that's unaware that we've got 700 or so bedrooms coming online in North Downtown. So there's this immediate need for affordable housing and it doesn't come quick. Even if we had $5 million on hand right now from this TAD money, it would still take 5 or 6 or 7 years to make that housing happen. So there's kind of this lag time going on when it comes to the interpretation of needs, I
Right,
think.
but to your point, we got an assisted grocery store, and and y'all gonna need to explain, 'cause I'm under the impression, and y'all correct me if I'm wrong, with the mall TAD, they are using TAD dollars though to get those housing in there to build out that structure, right?
Right. We were very specific about the affordable housing component of it as
Right.
well, right?
So I'm just trying to figure out then, could we apply, now, I'm using the grocery store because right now it's there. And it can really benefit that community a lot quicker than let's say with the housing stuff. So I wanna, and again, I know we get some type of plan, but if that's the case, I think that should be encouraging that, hey, we can go in and upgrade that grocery store. And they can provide those type of things that community may need. Now, what may happen, and I don't know, and it's Tiffany's district, we could get pushback from the community because that's not what we said. But one thing I think we could sell though, the grocery store is there now. Need some modification, if the owner approves, want to do that, need some modifications to provide better food options for that community, so.
And just to think, well, maybe about 2 layers that'd be helpful to contemplate. One is probably just to have some Georgia-based illustrations of benefits we've seen, just so that we've got some things that we know are the kind of things that pass legal muster in this state, under this state's laws with our gratuities clause. That'll be important to have. And then secondly, we might, if you were looking for some kind of commission-defined option or some kind of alternate path, is to think a little bit about what we just did with the ARPA homeless recommendations, where we might have multiple goals that have somewhat equal weight, rather than grocery store being 9 relative to apartments being 1. So that may be something just for you to chew on a little bit. Yeah, Ravina?
As we move forward with the community input, is it possible, Kelly, that we could work with UGA and doing a charrette like we did at Bethel?
That may be a future step.
Okay.
Because of course, right now, we're not talking about, any particular property owner. I mean, we would, the notion with Bethel was like, hey, we control this property. The unified government at least has partnership control with the housing authority. So that would be, I think, a future element, should there be a particular property identified.
And I guess it goes back to Commissioner Fisher, if that's the road we're heading down, because it's going to take more than fixing up that grocery store over there. It's going to be like putting lipstick on a pig. It's still going to be a pig. So there's got to be more of a collaborative effort for all of those businesses in that triangle. So maybe, I don't dare speak for the Inner East Athens group, but I definitely think that if we narrow it down, we can do a small charrette on paring it down. And what does that really look like?
A few steps between now and then, John.
So the $540,000 is for the East Downtown TAD. And so that's the priority list. So the stuff on that priority gets 100% of that funding, not 70%, 70%. What's the other 30 going to?
So if you think back to that map, geographically, this TAD is divided by the river. And so 70% would go east of the river with 30% reserved for west of it.
But regardless, it's what those priorities are. That's what that money's being spent on. Is those priorities
On either side of the.
on either side.
No.
That's the priorities.
Yeah.
It's for the
For the
whole
whole
TAD.
thing.
The interest in the whole TAD.
The whole TAD.
For the whole geography.
So the affordable housing could,
The arena is not on there. So none of this money is going to the arena.
well,
Not on the priority.
Said could, 30.
it wouldn't be healthcare and wellness, that's for sure.
It's not recommended.
Okay. That's what I was wanting to be clear.
Yeah, and it does seem like on this TAD in particular, it's like very distinct parts, there's east of the river, there's the arena area, and then there's all the way down to Charm in that area. It's a very wide,
Yeah.
like the Lexington Road one seems all kind of like the same area, this is very distinct. It's unusual that way.
I didn't even realize that the Charm area was on there, so I guess my thought is, yeah, do we get, so so these recommendations, does that include that Charm area? That's not my district no more, that's, so you're,
It stretches all the way down there. I mean,
but I'm saying, did you have some community input on these things?
I went to at least one of those input sessions.
Okay.
I did my best to get the word out. I sent a lot of emails and.
But you're comfortable with
I
the,
mean, this is what came out of the input sessions,
I'm good, I'm good.
I mean, this is what comes out of it. I'm happy to see this because it clearly reflects input from the people who live in traditional East Athens.
And that's the only point, I didn't realize it went to the Charm area, I really.
Yeah, it stretches all the way down there.
But, so my thought would be that maybe we would have a catch-all category that could be added that would be pedestrian safety improvements, because then if there was a request for something that there wasn't funding for.
Tiffany, did that come up? Yeah, no, it did not, because inner East Athens, as far as pedestrian safety, when you say pedestrian safety, the first thing they think about are bike lanes.
Okay,
That's not.
yeah, those are pedaling safety issues, but the pedestrian, it could, I'll talk with you
But
about
you're
it.
still talking about the concerns I've heard about Cone Drive, about the speed humps and
And there's
Traffic calming.
traffic
But
calming.
anyway, a traffic calming category could be in there as a loose option, which gives time for issues to be addressed that might be low on the list of what we're studying in legislative review, which is residential traffic calming. This area would benefit from TAD money.
There's a T-Splosh bucket for this.
Yeah, it may be the case that people are very
that's-
conscious of the T-Splosh funds that are teed up for the
Right.
next few years. And so
Okay.
prioritizing those elements, knowing that there are other dollars going to those
Yeah,
projects.
and you had spoken about how the group did learn, which we didn't, but they at least heard that. That might be why that's not on there. But I do like the idea of having the three categories, but maybe each category is a 1, 2, 3 instead of it. So the grocery would become the number one topic under economic development opportunities.
Well,
Grocery or.
I don't
I guess, Ilka, what I'm curious about is, are these prioritized or are these simply equally weighted top 10?
This is the way they prioritized it in their conversation.
And I guess when you go back to the next stage and then you talk about what you can do right now, because we got the money, whether we borrow, whatever, they may change the priority, So, but I wouldn't dare try to change this right now until we know what the dollar amount's going to end up as. I would love to do like hanging fruit, if the grocery store was, we could do today. If they're on board, I'm on board.
All right, anything else? All right, you'll see in the agenda report. All right.
For your time.
Just before we adjourn, I do have to note a couple of committee appointments while we're here on the record. UGA Medical School has an advisory structure that they're putting together, which is something of an adjunct to what was done when the base realignment process happened roughly 15 years ago. And so Commissioner Fisher and Courtney Tobin have been kind enough to be willing to serve on that as representatives for that redevelopment. So just want to note that. And with that noted, entertain a motion to adjourn.
Sorry.
Got a motion from Commissioner Fisher, second from Commissioner Taylor. All in favor? All right. Thanks, everyone.
Is that called user group? I was just gonna stay here for health science.
Advisory.
We did that, how did that?
And I think,
It smells like